So what causes that specific disease? So everything about drug discovery and development will be improved with AI and machine learning.
Hey Monica, welcome to Money Bites. I'm so excited to have you here. Also wanted to give a quick intro, a bio leader and drug developer.
Basically, we are developing medicines for patients so they can have a better life.
I love it. I want to actually start off from your life satisfaction graph. Looking at all the ups and downs that you've gone through, you're at the peak of satisfaction right now. Would you say it's trending upwards? It's trending downwards? It's plateaued?
So now we are seeing decline in investment in drug development. Right now is not the best time, but I hope it's gonna change and go back to where we were a couple of years ago.
Gotcha. Drug discovery being very investment heavy. I'm assuming also
Yes.
very long-term investment needed.
Yep, it takes years, up to 10 years to a drug coming from discovery to actually helping patients. Over 85% of drugs that go through this pipeline fail. So it's a very high risk, high reward process.
So let's go through what you're actually doing. I'm curious, do you get to choose what you work on in terms of I'm very interested in either this disease or this specific therapeutic solution, or are you just following the money?
Great. Now, so I love innovation. So throughout my career, as I said, I've been working on different modalities. So I've worked on small molecules, antibodies, and antibody-like molecules, cell and gene therapy. So I was involved in different biotech space, developing those different therapeutics because I wanted to be involved directly in those medicines.
Sorry, when you say moleculars, what are you talking about?
So we often, so antibodies are proteins, and we often will change antibody and just take small parts of it and combine it, and that will be the final therapeutic, for example. So we call it antibody-like molecules.
Gotcha. Can I understand that as you're kind of piecing together a puzzle, and that combination of a puzzle that you come up with can be a new drug?
That's correct. That's exactly what it is. It's very difficult to do, as you can imagine.
Why is it so difficult?
Ah,
And apologies, I'm coming from such an ignorant place.
biology is very difficult. I think you've probably heard about AlphaFold. So AlphaFold is predicting protein structures, and protein folding, which is the final structure of the protein, is the holy grail of biology. We've been working on it for 40 years, and it took a lot of effort from hundreds of different scientists, labs, thousands even, to finally have or be where we are right now, where we can actually take a linear amino acid sequence and predict what the structure of that sequence will be. Because as you can imagine, it can interact, all these little amino acids can interact with each other in very different way. And it grows exponentially. So we really took a long time because it's a complex problem, to understand and finally be able to predict how these proteins actually fold. And this is based on physical properties of the protein.
Can you explain to me, like I'm a 5-year-old, what a protein is?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So, do you know what DNA is? So cells have DNA, which is a code for how different proteins are being made in that cell. And so once DNA is translated into the protein, it is basically sequence of 20 different amino acids. So there are 20 different amino acids, like building blocks that you put together in different order, etc. So you have those 20 and you arrange them in different way. And you can arrange 300 of them in the same sequence, thousands of them in the same sequence, and that makes a different protein. And then those sequences, those blocks, fold onto each other, so they are not linear, but they actually form a structure. And then that structure is what makes the protein functional, because now it can interact with another protein that also has that three-dimensional structure. And depending on what is exposed here, it will guide how they interact with each other. And that's how different signals in your body send.
Just out of curiosity, if it took us such a long time to figure out the sequence, it sounds like we actually might have limited set of data, but you're actually saying we have a lot of data?
Thankfully for NIH, where they have established this PDB website where for tens of years, every crystal structure or structural information on protein has been submitted for anyone to visualize and obtain that data. And because we have this huge amount of data on protein structures available publicly to anyone, we can use that. And we have been using this to train models to predict the structure. But there are limitations there because some proteins are easier to work with than others. So most of the data that is available is on the easy proteins and not on the difficult proteins. So we still have a long way to go to have a full data that we can draw a picture on protein structures.
I find this fascinating because when you think of the stereotypical biopharma industry, it seems from an outsider's perspective very secretive and profit driven, but you're saying there's this whole open source community for the betterment of humanity that people are just submitting their work into so that other people can learn from it. That's amazing. Are you able to share what you're working on? Like, not generally, but specifically, what problem are you trying to solve right now?
Yeah, so right now I work with biotech companies as my clients where I advise them not just traditional drug discovery and development, but how they can implement AI and machine learning in their workflow and drug discovery and development.
I'm going to ask another naive question. When you say generative AI, are these using commercial foundational models that we hear about, like OpenAI, or is this like a specific?
Great question. So, some of these models are published coming from academic labs, but many, if they were developed by biotech companies or big pharma, those are not published, and those are internally developed models on their own data set. Especially big pharma, they have a lot of data, so they can very easy train their models on their own data.
How much of this is coming from the humans coming up with theories and using AI as a tool to figure out the solution versus allowing AI to say, okay, here's the problem, figure it out, and then the humans making the decision?
Great question. Yes. So right now we are still driving. The AI is just a tool right now, but the big pharma, especially right now, are already setting up labs where it's gonna be closed loop. So you will have AI designing sequences of hundreds of proteins connected to automation, so robots that will actually make the protein and then do different assays to study this protein and then feed it back to AI. The data goes back to AI, and then AI can recalculate and propose new sequence that are superior. And you can go through those number of different cycles to have a better therapeutics at the end.
Monica, if all of this works out, are you basically creating a system where you will put yourself out of work? Like, is that the end goal?
No, I don't think so. I don't know exactly what the roles for us will be, but we will have jobs because I remember. So I'll go back to the to history where when I was a grad student and one of my professors in structural biology, and he was an older professor, he said that when he was in grad school, the PhD students would have a calculator piece of paper and they would be calculating Fourier transform data that was obtained from protein structures. So they were doing the calculations, and that was their PhD project. And so obviously, once computers came on board, that's changed. They didn't have to do that, but you still had PhD people, making new discoveries. So there will be new things that we'll be doing using AI as a tool. I believe AI is just a tool and we are implementing it as anything else.
I appreciate your optimism because from somebody coming from a completely different industry, so big tech product manager, we are also talking a lot about our job security. But I love that you have the fundamental belief that there's still value added as a human being. Was there ever a situation until now where AI sort of spit out a result? Like the human gut instinct was like, oh, this doesn't make sense.
Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely. And actually, very often, especially when you are dealing with, as I mentioned, more complex protein structures and like that are more flexible and not very defined, as an expert in that area, often you'll be like, yeah, no, this is not right. This is completely wrong.
Oh, interesting. So that would mean that the human would require a certain level of expertise to be able to recognize when the AI is hallucinating.
That's right. Yes. For example, people that have been working in this field know exactly what good drug looks like on the outside, let's say. So I'm not even talking about its activity, but just can we develop it? Can we make it as medicine? And you're just looking at the surface of the protein and you know, okay, it can't be too charged, it can't be too hydrophobic. It can't have these amino acids or too many of them on the outside. So if AI actually predicts those kind of red flags and it says, oh, yeah, well, this is the sequence that I recommend. You right away say, okay, we either have to test it or we change it. And usually when you test it, it comes out that it's not a good design.
Monica, do you think that is creating an environment where newer entrants is going to have a harder time coming into your line of work? Do you think the number of humans that would be needed to do drug discovery will become less and less?
I don't think so. Again, as I am an optimist, how many medicines we can develop will grow exponentially, and hence we'll need more people to actually work on that, even though with AI, or the same amount of people, but with the help and acceleration with AI. So I doubt, unless, as we discussed before, there won't be any investment in drug development.
I love that outlook. Well, not the investment part, but I love that outlook. So, in your optimistic vision, then the possibility of eradicating all types of like all diseases is feasible.
It is. It's still long into the future
Yeah.
because the main problem actually is right now we are developing drugs for known targets. So targets that have been defined for a long time. And
Sorry, and when you say targets, is that disease?
yes, exactly. So
Mhm.
what causes that specific disease? We still don't understand the exact molecular reason why a human being has that specific disease. It's very complex. That's another area that the AI is being used, which I'm not an expert in, but I know that people are using AI to identify what targets, what specific part of different pathways in the body are responsible for that disease, and how can we correct it then?
I can appreciate this more and more. Thank you for the analogy. You did mention, though, like with all this advancement that's happening, 85% of the trials or experiments fail. In your line of work, is this like a pass fail? You get a strict outcome after like final experiment? Or is it more of a accumulation of data and gradually you realize, oh, this is not going to work?
So it really depends. There are different stages of drug development that can lead to the failed project. But most often it will happen in the clinical trials. Eventually, a therapeutic goes into humans. We still have limited models that we can use to mimic how the drug will behave in humans. And that's another area. And again, that I'm not an expert in that we are using AI to develop different organoids that we can use, for example, to see how our therapeutics or drugs will behave in human bodies and translate that to the clinic.
Just found it interesting because at my job, we just also lose sight of work life balance. But one of the advice that my colleague often shares with me is like, we're not saving babies here. So don't like merge too much of your life with work. But in your life, of work, you're actually saving lives. You're actually impacting lives. Does the stress level is it just that much multifold different?
It is, because it's not, even when you're working on the early stage. So that's why you are so excited you're developing this drug, right? But you have to make sure that it goes through every experiment possible or needed to ensure its safety and that it will do what it needs to do. So I think we just concentrate on that part more than anything else.
That makes a lot of sense. I'd love to transition that into the earlier part of your career. You had to run experiments yourself to get your foot in the door. Can we go to Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico was an interesting time in your life where you moved to a different country following your husband's new role. I believe you said that you had to take an unpaid lab work to continue to gain experience.
That wasn't actually the most critical because at that time I still had small kids. Youngest one was 5 months old, so I have plenty to do. But yes, it was interesting that I was involved in mostly unpaid activities. I don't want to say disappointing time was when we actually came back to Massachusetts. And then I was applying, since the kids were a little bit older, I was applying to full time positions to get back fully into the lab. And that is when I was not getting any traction. And eventually I decided to send out applications that I'll be working for free in your lab to different academic labs. And with that, everyone got back to me, which was nice. So I actually saw a couple of different professors, but one professor from MIT, Barbara Imperiali, actually, she needed lab manager and she offered me a paid part-time position. And at that point, I was like, I'll take paid position that I'm overqualified versus non-paid, right? So I did that. But then something excellent happened because we applied for a postdoctoral fellowship and I got that from NIH and I became a postdoc. So I was back into science again, which was very exciting and a relief.
Few follow-up questions. Why do you think you weren't getting any callbacks at the time?
It's really difficult to get back if you take time off. Expectation is that you only take a couple of months off and you get back into business, I think.
For maternity leave or for any reason?
I think in general, like the expectation is that you get back to work,
Okay.
which is sad, I think. I think there is a value in spending more times with baby.
How long did you take time off?
I took about 4 years off, but I was working. I did adjunct professor. I worked with professor in computer science department to work on model prediction of different pathways. Yeah, so I've been involved in like AI and machine learning for throughout my career. I was doing my postdoc, for example, at Yale. I already was using like very limited models that were developed in other lab. I also started my own nature's products company, so I was doing different products in the kitchen.
Wait, what? You had a you had a products company out of your kitchen?
Yeah, yeah. So I was making mosquito repellent, soaps, lip balm, and stuff like that. Yeah, which was a quite interesting experience.
What happened to it?
Then I got back when we moved back to Boston. I started working at an MIT with small kids. I just didn't have time to continue it. So yeah, I stopped.
That's amazing. Okay. So you have this entrepreneurial streak in you. Wow, you joined Pfizer and your satisfaction graph skyrockets.
Yes, because in academia, I usually don't get paid much. So that was mainly financial, and then also I think being part of making therapeutics for patients change your thinking and satisfaction instead of like doing general science, general experiments, which is awesome. I love science, and so I loved it, but like specifically designing and making drugs for patients. It's a different world.
Going from academia to actually in drug discovery, do you feel like you lost something versus what did you gain?
It's very often hard for scientists to transition from academia to industry. It's actually quite difficult because in academia you have this freedom of thinking, creating your own questions. So this curiosity is just shaping what experiments you are doing, which is amazing. And this is how academia works. That's how all the discoveries are being made because scientists are curious and they are answering the questions that they are asking. In industry, it's a different beast. At the end, you have to deliver a therapeutic, right? You don't really have to understand how this molecule works, how this drug works, as long as it works and it's safe. And so you are answering these different questions.
I am so inspired by the fact that you have carved a path for yourself where you have again and again gone back to what interests you, what you're trained on, and where your roots are.
I fell in love with proteins when I was undergraduate, when I took structural biology class, and I just could not imagine how amazing proteins were, like how flexible they are little machineries, perform functions. It's just unbelievable. I am still amazed when I see some proteins and how they we see films of different models of how the protein functions and the loops are closing and opening up to perform a function. It's just I every single time I'm blown away how amazing proteins are.
What do you think is your unfair advantage in doing what you do? Do not be humble.
I think I have a good understanding of predictive tools and what can be possible because, and I feel very comfortable with that. I think that's why I'm very optimistic about AI and machine learning in drug discovery and development because I treat it as a tool and a tool that we will use to improve our work, but not just to improve our work, but improve therapeutics or drugs that we are actually develop, better drugs that will be safer, that will be more potent, that we will require less to manufacture, save the resources. So everything about drug discovery and development will be improved with AI and machine learning.
I love how committed you are to this cause. Last question. Where would you focus your time and energy if money, resource, process, nothing was a constraint?
There are so it okay, then I would
I
step in
see
drug
getting
development.
excited.
If I have unlimited amount of money, I would invest in every aspect of drug discovery and development. But from personal perspective, because I remember when I was in grad school, I was like, I want to visualize. That was my goal, to visualize human being in atomic space. So, like, how do we look as atoms, atomic entity, right? So that was my goal. So right now, to have understanding of every single interaction in the body of protein, DNA, every single cell, how organs are we have basic understanding, right? But every single cell in every organ and how these organs interact with each other. And so I think that just to have like molecular level of understanding of how human body works, very detailed, would be amazing.
Okay, if any of our listeners have the unlimited resources and willing to fund Monica for incorporating AI into all phases of drug discovery or visualizing the human anatomy on an atomic level, you know where to reach her.
Sounds great.
This was fantastic. One of the most interesting chats I've had in a while.
Oh my god, thank you, Menki. That was great. I really appreciate all your questions and your time.
Super.